Dr. Hockley, you've been seeing this too, right? Tell me about some of your experiences with kids who really do need, and their families do need to start learning to make better food choices now.
Yeah, it's always a difficult discussion, whether or not the parent sort of already realizes that maybe it's becoming something of an issue. We like to try and we were talking with Sarah about this a little bit earlier. We like to try and create a positive atmosphere around the eating and, what they should choose and what they maybe should stay away from or eat more in moderation, because we definitely don't want to, sort of make the child feel like something is such a problem. We don't want to hyper focus on the weight necessarily itself. We just want to create more of a positive atmosphere around eating and healthy exercise and healthy living, so that they set up good habits now and they help to resolve some of those issues in the long run. So we do see it, but we are also trying to create a positive atmosphere rather than kind of be that overbearing force that's just being nothing but negative.
And that's a great segue into Sarah, because I need you to help get me out of panic mode. Because for me, and we were talking about this before we started, one of the biggest stressors, one of my two children is a fairly picky eater. Is there hope for families like us? Not only might you be dealing with picky eaters, but you are also dealing with families who are working early in the morning till late. They don't have time. They don't have energy. Is it feasible and possible to really change a family's diet while still recognizing I'm tired, or I'm frustrated, or again, I'm tired?
Oh, absolutely. And I think kind of what Dr. Hockley was saying is not making it such a negative environment. So a healthy lifestyle doesn't have to be this picture perfect thing where we eat fresh fruits and vegetables, we exercise 2 hours a day, that kind of glamorous thing that we see on social media. It really can be just as simple as adding some frozen broccoli with your meal at night, or it can be going for a walk as a family, for the hour that you have. It doesn't have to be this, like I said, picture perfect experience.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me permission not to have to be the Pinterest mom all the time.
Yes, exactly.
That is great. So I do want to start us out before we get to the questions, because they are coming in. With Dr. Eng, you wanted to talk about some of the key principles in dealing with nutrition. And one thing that I found very interesting was when you said it's very important not to classify things as like good or bad, or to demonize certain foods. Why don't you talk to our viewers at home a little bit about that?
Excuse me. Yeah. So just like we were saying before, we really want to create a positive environment with dealing with nutrition in our kids around eating, to kind of develop good, healthy habits. So we don't want to necessarily call foods bad foods or good foods. There are foods that are more healthy for us, and some foods that are obviously less healthy for us. So we kind of split that into foods that we want to make part of our everyday lifestyle, everyday meals. And then there are foods that we want to really limit how much we incorporate into our daily meals, because they can lead to some of those worse health consequences, such as chips and sodas, that sort of thing. So really not making things about this is really bad for you, but something that you can still have and enjoy, but in moderation.
And that's the key, Sarah, right? The great Oprah Winfrey. I remember once watching one show of hers, and she has publicly battled with weight and eating healthy and living healthy. And one thing that she said worked for her was, as Dr. Eng pointed out, not classifying things as good and bad, and not withholding things completely. Oprah said, my trainer and my dietitian told me if I am good 95% of the time, then I can eat those salt and vinegar chips and that fried chicken, that 5%. Why don't you talk a little bit about why it's important not to cut anything out completely?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that that's the percentages that I use too. So 95% of our diet should be those everyday foods that Dr. Eng was talking about, our fruits and vegetables, our whole grains, our lean meats, all those different things. And then 5% should be our fun foods. So we're not classifying good as bad. I'm using everyday foods as our healthy foods and fun foods as our things that might not be nutritionally beneficial, but they still bring joy to our kiddos' lives and to our own lives. And I love that that Oprah also had a dietitian that thought that way. Because what happens when we tell kiddos or even ourselves that we can't enjoy that 5% of fun foods, we will eventually binge on those foods. And so it's just best to learn how to create a healthy lifestyle that allows for 5% of those fun foods that we can enjoy on special occasions, or, you know, fun Friday night or birthdays or what have you.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Begg, what are you seeing as some of the biggest factors for kids who you are classifying as obese right now? Is it just simply lack of a balanced diet, lack of activity, the family, just the combination of everything? What are you seeing as some of the factors behind these numbers?
So it's actually quite complex, and it's not just about, you know, eating more and exercising less. Obesity is a very complex disease, and, you know, that involves genetic factors, environmental factors. Definitely, you know, our diet plays a huge role, but it's not just blaming the parents or the children. I think that's a very common perception that, you know, even seen, unfortunately, in medicine, that we kind of like blame and, you know, the parents or the families, and, you know, children feel that it's their fault, which is actually not. Yes, environment plays a very important role, but it's much more complex than that. Research shows that there's around 40 to 70% chance of genes playing a role in obesity. Yes, we can overcome that by changing our, you know, by the food choices that we make. Unfortunately, we live in a very obesogenic environment where the food choices, you know, that we have around, you'll see billboards of McDonald's, and, you know, the portion sizes being really large. So we have to actually get out of our comfort zone to select, you know, what we will opt. And a lot of times children don't have their choices. They are being offered, you know, unhealthy food, or I should say, you know, more sugary foods at school and stuff. So you have to make that choice. So that's why I feel this topic needs a lot of awareness. And I would just add to Dr. Ang and what Sarah said about you know, it's just about using these foods, the not so good foods, as treats. For example, if you're going for a birthday, it's okay to have a slice of pizza, but don't have pizza every day. You know, don't have juice every day, which is, you know, very high in sugar. Don't have it every day, but you can have it as a treat if all your friends are having it, you know, at a birthday party, so that you don't feel very isolated. So it's just important to remember that. And another point that I really want to emphasize here is making healthier, you know, alternatives. For instance, if I really like, you know, potato chips, but I can't have potato chips because it's, you know, sometimes you crave for the crunch and stuff. So find healthier alternatives. You have air fryer these days. You have you know, ovens where you can just make baked chips, you know, sweet potato chips, or, you know, just find healthier alternatives, which are easily, you know, very thankfully, we live in a social media world. There are so many recipes out there. So I think finding healthier alternatives is the way to go.
And it's a great thing that you point out. We do live in an area that is not only medically underserved, well, there aren't enough doctors for our families, but it's also economically depressed. And many of our families are facing true economic challenges. I could take 20 bucks right now and feed my kids and me very easily at Taco Bell or McDonald's even. But it's hard to get enough groceries for $20 with you know, fresh chicken breasts and all the veggies and this and that. And so that is a very real struggle for families. So thank you for noting that. Fast food is not only quick, but it's also much more affordable for some families, unless you shop around, and some just don't have the means. They don't have a car even. We don't know what those families are struggling with. Some of the questions, one of the main points here was we wanted to bust some nutrition myths. So let's start with that. So the first one, can certain saturated fats actually be good for you in moderation? Who wants to take this one? I'm gonna call on the class if one of you doesn't volunteer to start talking. So
I can take this one.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
No problem. Yes, saturated fats can definitely be part of a healthy diet. If you think about the foods that have saturated fat in it, it's things like yogurt, chicken, you know, all those animal products that can still be part of a healthy diet. One thing that I love to tell families is when you're trying to build a healthy diet, focus less on taking out foods that are in that unhealthy category and focus more on adding in healthy foods. And you'll naturally just kind of get rid of those unhealthy foods. So in saturated fat, for example, if you're going for a salad, maybe do an olive oil based dressing rather than a ranch dressing that has saturated fat. Right there, you've already cut out some saturated fat without even really having to think about it.
And some fats are good, like you said. I mean, there are fatty foods like avocados, salmon. Yeah. Those are good fats because your body still needs the good fat, right?
Exactly. Your body absolutely needs fat. So those are unsaturated fats. And so that would be exactly your olive oils, that would be your avocado, that'd be your salmon, nuts, all those good foods.
Okay, thank you for answering that one. Dr. Eng, I'm going to throw this one to you. Juices. So lots of kids will be given little juice packs. They say 100% real juice. Is that okay? Are there any things we need to watch out for when we put those in our kids' school lunches, or after school we hand them a box or a pouch or a glass?
Yeah, so juices in general, even when they say it's 100% juice made from fruit, it doesn't really make it necessarily a healthy choice for your child. Like we mentioned, it's one of those fun foods that we want to kind of limit in moderation and still be able to enjoy. But really, your child should really consume less than 4 ounces of juice per day. And instead of offering juice, the nutrition that you're trying to get from the fruit, you can offer them whole fruits and vegetables. With those whole fruits, you're going to get a little bit of fiber into their system, as well as provide the vitamin C that we normally enjoy from fruits and fruit juices. But the juice themselves is really a lot of sugar. It doesn't go, it doesn't take a huge step toward making your child full. So they overall consume more. And so that's one of the reasons why we want to limit how much we're giving.
So 4 ounces is like, I mean, that's not a lot. So even like orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, really watch those then.
I would like to add to that. I totally agree with Dr. Ang. The thing with juices is that you can, gulp down a large quantity without, feeling satiated or feeling full, because it doesn't have any fiber in it. You're just taking the pulp out, taking the fiber out. It's just sugar, which is, even if it's pure, fresh homemade orange juice, just imagine if you want to make one glass, you'll need at least 5-6 oranges to make a glass. That's like concentrated sugar, fructose, which is not good for us. It directly, affects the liver and ultimately can cause fatty liver disease and all of that. So yes, just limiting to 4 ounces, but you're absolutely right. It's less, less than half a glass. It's small. So just opt for a fruit instead, which has fiber and will make you feel fuller for a long time.
So Dr. Hockley, when we're talking about maybe treats, sometimes people might give their kids soda and then they think, oh, clear ones, they can't be as bad, right? Why don't you talk to us a bit about some of the misconceptions when it comes to soda?
Yeah, definitely. So, sodas, it's not a shock that they do contain a lot of concentrated sugars as well. And there's a lot of like 0 sugar, 0 calorie, kind of sodas out there as well, diets, things like that. The reality, I think, is too that those are the substitutes. And, while the jury is sort of still out on how sugar substitutes can affect our diet, nonetheless, they are substitutes. So whether it's regular soda that does have a lot of sugar in it, or the substitutes, ideally our bodies love water. They crave water. When we're exercising, we want water. So, there's the treat category, and maybe some sodas occasionally can be in the treat category, but it, definitely wouldn't be one that we would say would be healthy for everyday consumption, as opposed to, because then we're trading off with, probably not taking in as much water and as much hydration otherwise.
Okay, Sarah, I want to ask you then about a different kind of drink, milk. When I was a kid, I had, and luckily I like it, so it's not a problem, but I had to drink a full glass of milk every meal at the time back in the 70s, 80s. It was like, everybody was drinking full fat at that time. 2% eventually came out. Kids need calcium. Obviously, we all need calcium, but what are some tips you can give for families when it comes to milk that's either, from a cow? How about oat milk? How about almond milk? I told somebody like peas, they make it out of peas.
They do.
I did not like that. I'm saying it right now, but when it comes to almond milk and all those different things, what's some advice you can give to families? Is one better than the other? Is low fat really better than, all that stuff?
Sure. So I think it depends on your child's age. It depends on what you're drinking the milk for. So typically we recommend cow's milk because it does have a good amount of protein in it. It has about 8 grams, I think, if I remember off the top of my head. And it has a lot of calcium in it. The kiddos under 2, we really want that whole fat because that's where a bulk of their calories are still coming from. With the kiddos over 2, you really can switch to the low fat or fat free or even reduced. Those calories aren't going to affect the protein content, and it's not going to affect the calcium content. And those are the two reasons why we're recommending milk so heavily. When you're picking an alternative, it really is important to kind of weigh it against cow's milk. So make sure that it has a good amount of calcium, if not a little bit more than cow's milk. So for example, almond milk typically does have a good amount of calcium in it, but their protein, I want to say, is like maybe 2 grams, 4 grams, where cow's milk, you're getting 8 grams. That pea protein milk, unfortunately, does have a lot of calcium, lots of protein in it. So for a kiddo who still needs those nutrients, it is a good option. And if you have a cow's milk allergy, that is one that we definitely recommend.
Maybe I'll try it again. But I mean, I put it in coffee. So maybe that was mistake number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Dr. Begg, we've got a couple of questions coming in that I would love for you to answer. One is, one parent asks, are there measures to test kids for diabetes if we're concerned about their overconsumption of sugar? And what are also some potential signs that maybe they should talk to their pediatrician or even see a specialist because there might be a concern for type 2 diabetes there?
So if there is a concern for type 2 diabetes, yes, you can, there is a test called hemoglobin A1C. You can talk to your pediatrician about it and get it done. Typically, type 2 diabetes that we commonly see in children who are suffering from obesity, you would see a larger BMI. You would start seeing darkening of the skin behind their neck, in their armpits. That's something medically called acanthosis nigricans. You'll start seeing skin tags that weren't there before. You'll start seeing them, feeling very tired, sluggish all the time. So these are some of the signs that maybe, they are in the process of getting metabolic syndrome, something that's affecting their liver. They're, maybe having underlying fatty liver disease as well as a consequence of obesity. So all of it's, kind of interrelated. In adolescence, pubertal age, you'll start seeing, females can start seeing delay in their periods, irregular periods. So definitely, if there is a concern, definitely bring it up to your pediatrician. And if a referral is needed, they can refer to GI as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then another question for you, doctor. How can or whoever can answer this, how can someone with oral allergy syndrome maintain a healthy diet?
So seeing an allergist, first of all, and then working closely with the dietitian to see which foods they are allergic to. And there are a lot of supplemental formulas out there that are safe. And, depending on the allergy, we can offer treatment based on that. Definitely treatable. Yes, challenging for sure. And I'm sure, for parents, it can be very challenging, but definitely we can work around children suffering from oral allergy syndrome. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hockley, let me pitch this one to you. Are veggie straws or veggie chips healthier than potato chips? Dr. Bigg's already like, nope.
That's a great question. Yes, so to address that, in reality, veggie straws, so vegetables themselves aren't usually shaped like straws. So it's probably not a shock that the actual ingredients that go into veggie straws are more of like a veggie powder with a potato base. which nonetheless, so is still providing some starchiness to it. They're usually salted too, so there's a lot of added salt in there. But if they're a potato base, they're probably not much better than chips themselves. So rather than that, like we were mentioning before with air frying and oven baking, we can do air fried, veggie chips, make our own, make it healthy, because we know that it came from a whole vegetable. So there are definitely healthier alternatives to get our vegetables in a quote unquote fun form. But yeah, there's still a potato base with some added salt to it. So not quite as healthy as we would like to think.
Okay, didn't know that. Sarah, if something says low fat, low sugar, does that necessarily mean it's healthier than the non-low fat, non-low sugar version?
That is a good question. I think it really depends on the food. I know Dr. Big and I were talking about low fat yogurts the other day, and how a lot of people will kind of flock to them thinking that they're a healthier option, but they typically are higher in sugar. So I think when it comes to looking at a healthy food, we have to look at calories, we have to look at the nutrients that it provides, we have to look at the protein, all those different things. And so really depends on the food, but I think the yogurt is a really good example of, a healthy alternative that might not be as healthy as the real option with the full fat.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ang, are frozen and canned fruits and veggies just as healthy as fresh fruits and veggies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So frozen canned fruits and vegetables can be just as healthy as the fresh fruits. And in fact, sometimes they have even a higher vitamin and mineral content in the frozen and canned foods than the fresh ones. So really, the thing to look out for, though, is when you're choosing, like, say, a canned fruit, to make sure that it's not in, or that it is in 100% juice. You want to avoid any of the ones that are coming in a heavy syrup, or sometimes they say no sugar added, but that really means that they have sugar substitutes. So only the ones that are kind of in their own 100% juice will have the fruit, the juice from its own fruit. So that's the kind of trick to look out for on your fruit labels.
Okay, interesting that you said that sometimes these packaged versions actually have a potential higher or more benefits. Is that just because of how they're processed, or maybe because you're like me and you buy a ton of stuff and then it starts to go bad? Like what? I didn't know that. I don't know if you or Sarah could answer that, but that's good to hear.
Yeah, so the frozen fruits are going to be packaged or frozen at peak freshness. So sometimes they do have a higher vitamin and mineral content. And then even in the heating process, there's certain vitamins and minerals that are amplified when they're heated. So for example, there's a vitamin that is in tomatoes that is increased when it's heated. And so tomato sauce will actually have higher contents of that vitamin than just a fresh tomato. And I'm blanking on what the vitamin is, but yeah, that's a really fun example.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is very good to know. All right. Another one because I've heard Dr. Hockley answer this question before. Sports drinks. Even what about like the G0, like the Gatorade Zeros and stuff? Are those okay to give to your kids?
Great question. So, if they were kids that are running track and field, football, they're burning a lot of, sweating a lot, they are really, really active children, you might be okay to consider giving them maybe a half a thing of a sports drink. There's some electrolytes in there that can be beneficial. The alternative, though, is you could, have them get a snack of some broccoli or some celery, get some peanut butter, a banana kind of as they're exercising. The reality is that some of those electrolytes, it's like salt, because our sweat is salty. So if they're sweating a lot, they're losing a lot of salt. You could replenish some of that. If they're not that active, the reality is they really just probably need water. These sports drinks, in addition to some of those electrolytes, do still have a lot of sugar that isn't necessarily required for a lot of levels of activity that our children engage in. But the alternative is a snack bag size of broccoli, salted peanut butter, a banana will still provide them all the things they need. Plus, as we were saying before, the fibers and the fiber to help keep them regular and all the other health benefits there too.
So it sounds like if they're playing a sport or they've been playing outside, it's hot, they've been running around, it's okay to give them some sports drink, but
A little bit.
A little bit of that, but sports drinks really aren't an everyday thing like Dr. Eng says. It's not an everyday thing.
Correct.
Okay, good to know. It's so funny because I remember you telling a reporter once in town, unless you're an elite athlete, mom or dad, you really probably don't need it. So that was a good reality check for I think many people who watched that segment. Dr. Begg, do smoothies provide enough daily content of fruits and vegetables? If someone's making it home with banana, blueberries, strawberries, some milk, is that enough, or does it really need to be the actual fruits themselves?
So if you can eat the actual fruits and vegetable, that's great. A lot of children that I see, parents they want their children to, gain more weight, or children who are, struggling to gain weight. I think in those children, smoothies are a great alternative because you can have your choice of milk and then you add all the fruits or berries. A lot of children don't like to eat, vegetables and stuff. So you can throw in anything that you want because it just basically blends in with the say berries and stuff like that. You can actually put in a scoop or two of peanut butter to make it more high calorie, depending if you want to give it to children who are not able to gain weight. If this is for someone who's struggling with obesity, I would just recommend sticking to eating the whole fruit instead, because as I said, that will fill you up with the fiber and be more. And this is very different from a juice. So just wanted to clarify, juice and smoothie are two different things. Yeah. With juice, it's just concentrated sugar. You're just squeezing, for instance, an orange, just getting the sugar part out. But in smoothies, you're kind of blending it with the pulp. So it's a little different if the sugar, if the overall fruit consumption is not the best. So yes, a glass would be okay, but I would still prefer having a whole fruit instead as compared to smoothie. But if your child is underweight, then smoothies are great because, you can throw in a bunch of stuff and it'll be like your whole meal in one glass. So that's great.
You were talking about if this isn't obesity, but this is more the healthy eating side of things. You were talking about if your child, if you feel like your child might be looking a little too small, trying to gain some weight. One question that came in was, should you give protein supplements like Ensure or the different ones you always see at Target or Costco to children who don't seem to eat quite enough, or you're worried that they just look super skinny, and that you're worried that they're not growing? And yeah, this one was from me. So I, can you give your kids protein shakes? Or is that really not a good idea?
So that's a great question. We do have a lot of kids who do take, these supplements. I would actually prefer making your smoothies at home if you are struggling with, weight, gaining weight, because how much sugar, if you're adding, how much whatever fruit you want to make and put in your smoothie. And as I said, there are so many healthier options out there. Avocados are very good and good fats, so you can add in all the good fats and make your own smoothie rather than picking something that has a long shelf life, has a bunch of additives, sugar. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. We do have a lot of children who take these, but I would prefer if you can make it at home, I would go for that option.
Can you add, you see the different protein powders. I think they're normally marketed for like if you're working out and stuff, but are there any supplements like that are okay for kids, or are you rather like, no, let's find some other sources?
I would stick to, being more natural as much as possible and adding, you don't necessarily need them. So, then we'll get into a different topic of adding peptides and collagen powders and all of that. That's a completely separate topic, but just for children, I feel if you can make your own smoothies at home with fresh ingredients, that's the best way to go. You can just even add some spinach and kale, which a lot of children don't like to eat just raw. You can just, it'll look green, but it'll taste great, because of the berries, different berries, and add peanut butter. That's a great source, to add healthy fats, and it'll just be very high in good calories.
Yeah, I found that spinach is a lot easier to hide into things than kale. No matter what I add to kale, you taste that bitterness. But spinach, Sarah, it seems like spinach can be hidden. Not that you always want to hide things, but I've been known to throw a handful or two of spinach into the smoothies I make my kids, and my son never would have known if my daughter didn't squeal on me. But like, are there some benefits to trying to sneak in some of that stuff, maybe where they don't see it so in your face?
Oh yeah, and every time I talk with a parent who's trying to get fruits and veggies in, they're some of the sneakiest people I've ever met. They can chop up different veggies and throw it in ground beef, or you could even puree carrots and throw it in your macaroni and cheese sauce. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Smoothies, great example. You can throw in some spinach there. In your lasagna, you can chop up some zucchini really fine and throw it in there. You won't even be able to tell probably. Some kids can though. You would be surprised. There's some kids that can taste it.
Yeah, seriously. They're like private investigators, and they can sniff out the littlest things.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Ang, I know you were saying about not trying to demonize food, but are there ever any foods little kids should not eat?
Yeah, in general, foods that we want to avoid in kids are the ones, especially in small kids, are the ones that are choking hazards. We definitely don't want to give foods, especially to the kids under the age of 4, that are very easily to choke on and get lodged in their windpipe. Things like chopped up hot dogs, grapes, little corn kernels, even marshmallows and small hard candies. Those are the things that we generally want to avoid. Otherwise, whatever we're giving our kid, we're always looking at the nutrition value and whether it's contributing some aspect of nutrition to their growth.
Thank you. Sarah, here's one for you. How can we enhance iron in a child's diet if they don't eat meat?
Sure. There's always supplementation. So if your kid just does not like any iron-rich food, there's great iron supplements out there. But you can add beans, you could add iron-fortified cereals and breads. There are most dried fruits are really high in iron as well, so raisins. There's a lot of options for your kiddo if they don't like meat.
Okay. Dr. Hockley, are the Honest, here's another one that just came in. Are Honest brand juices an actual healthier juice for kids, or is that just some savvy marketing?
That is a very good question. I'm not particularly familiar with the nutritional label on the Honest drinks. I still think that the principle stands, if possible, to just eat the whole fruit itself. There's no bottled juice out there, I think, that is going to provide the pulp and the meatiness of a real just eating a whole fruit. And so that there's really no good way of getting that fiber in there. There are pulpy juices, which may help a little bit, but I still think that the principle still stands. And I apologize if this is wrong, but there's still some level of of sugar in there. So I think when you're faced with the decision of should I drink it or should I eat it, I still say go with eat it.
Okay, no, that's good to know. And that brings up another question. When it comes to packaging, it just came top of mind. Someone had asked last week, are granola bars healthier than candy bars? Sarah, I don't know if you want to take this one. I mean, because you see how some of them are packaged, and they're packaged all pretty. They have their company philosophy listed on them. So you think that it's, super good, but are granola bars okay? And are they healthier than candy bars?
Yeah, so it comes back to kind of what we were talking about before of nourishing your child. So what I always look at first is kind of the calories if it's going to be a snack. We want it to be anywhere from 100, maybe 200 calories for a snack. And that's our granola bars land between 100 and 300 calories, and our candy bars also land between 100 and 300 calories. So in that sense, they're pretty equal. Both have sugar in them, all those things. But I will say that granola bars have something that is actually going to nourish your child. So they have whole grains a lot of the times with the oats. They sometimes will have different nuts in there. So that's something to think about too when you're picking a food for your child is, maybe the calories are the same. Maybe, weight-wise, if we're worried about that, that might not be, super, super helpful. But at the end of the day, we're also trying to nourish our children.
Okay, that's good to know. So there are some, just read labels, look at the ingredients. There might be some that are okay if they have like the almonds and all the different things in it. but maybe not the chocolate dipped marshmallow chocolate chip granola bar.
Right. And of course, we had talked about
That's a fun
before.
food.
Yeah, it's a fun food. I love the marshmallows and the chocolate dipped ones. So every once in a while.
Okay, no, that's good to know. Let's see, we've got a few more questions coming in. Dr. Begg, when should you start worrying if your child is a super picky eater? Is there a certain point where you're like, okay, this kid just won't eat anything?
I think getting evaluated, if you're ever concerned, and I think parents are great historians. So if you ever feel that you are concerned, it's great to get your child checked by his or her pediatrician, see what percentile they fall in on the growth chart, just some screening blood work for thyroid disease, for celiac disease, just screening, for CBC, for checking for their hemoglobin, all of that, I think is very essential just to make sure they're not missing anything. Parents pick up a lot of stuff, since they're seeing their child every day. So they do pick up a lot of stuff. So just to be on the safe side, it's great to just touch base with your pediatrician and see if they need any further evaluation. A lot of times it's just that, mom thing that, oh, my child doesn't look as, a little bit, it could have been a little bit on the healthier side. And sometimes it's just mom guilt, but it's great to get checked just to be sure that your child is healthy and does not have any nutritional deficiencies because of picky eating and all of that. So just some screening blood work to begin with, and then depending on that, the pediatrician can take things forward.
Okay, here's another one for you, Dr. Begg, as a GI specialist here. What can we avoid if our child has a sensitive stomach?
So what do you exactly mean by sensitive stomach? I think that's a terminology that, we often see a lot of children and adolescents come to the clinic. You have to describe, I think I need more details. What do you mean by sensitive? Like, are you having diarrhea, or is it like irritable bowel syndrome? Like, what do you exactly mean by sensitive? So I would definitely need more history to help with this question. There's no really like treatment that, okay, I'm feeling my stomach is sensitive. It's hard to, get to answer this one without further details.
Okay, and then like you were saying earlier, anytime a parent is even remotely concerned about anything, the first call they should make is to their pediatrician.
Right, definitely.
Okay, and then something else that we hear a lot about is, I know we're talking more about obesity, but when it comes to things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, people think, well, I'm skinny, I'm not obese, I can't be having those problems. But I would love to open this up to the group just to talk about how you don't have to be overweight to have heart disease. I'm Filipino, and in our culture, we eat a lot of rice, a lot of starches, and the prevalence of type 2 diabetes in our ethnicity is very high. And my dad is like $120 wet, and like, so I was like, how could you have heart disease? So I'd love for you to talk about some of the myths around that. Like, people think, well, I'm not overweight, so I can't have clogged arteries.
That's an excellent question. And it, again, it all comes down to seeing your doctor at least annually, especially, with COVID around. I know a lot of pediatricians were seeing that a lot of families were not seeing their, pediatricians for a whole year or even more than that. There are certain ages, like for instance, after 9 years of age, you should be, getting tested, checking for, just a lipid panel to see if your cholesterol, triglycerides, all of that is okay. So at least just a screening blood work to see if your hemoglobin A1C, as I said, just to make sure that for the past 3 months, your glucose level were under control. So just getting some screening blood work absolutely helps. You want to play safe rather than, being sorry later on. You can, prevent a lot of stuff by diagnosing things earlier. I totally agree with you. There are a lot of patients with high cholesterol who are actually on the leaner side. There are so many people who have fatty liver disease, but unfortunately, they're not obese. They're actually lean, and something called lean fatty liver disease. So definitely, just some screening blood work with liver tests and can be very helpful in diagnosing things earlier and seeking treatment earlier in the course.
And I'd like to talk to the residents about this one because you joined the Valley Children's Family, I believe, in what, year 1 of the pandemic? So you were here when the world shut down. And even as things started to reopen, there are lots of parents who even now, masks aren't even required in school. Everything's open again. Even now, parents are still super scared to take their child to their pediatrician or to their specialist. I would love for you two, Dr. Hockley or Dr. Eng, just to talk about why it's important to keep these wellness checks in place, and also about why they shouldn't be scared to come out here.
Well, so in the clinic that I work in, where I see well children, as well as sick visits, what I've seen is, so at Valley Children's, we see a lot of children, as we know, and we do see a lot of children who have complex medical needs. And what I've experienced is the added fear from the parents from that end is that they are very susceptible to illness, and with complex care, illness can mean a very drastic change in their health. And we have been doing a lot of telemedicine visits as well. So I always reassure my families that that is an option particularly if it's hard to leave your home with all of the medical equipment they have, if they are still a little bit, nervous about it, which I definitely understand. So we do offer a lot of telemedicines, both for sick visits as well as well child's, but also that we are, we as our physicians and in our clinics, we are still taking all the precautions. So we obviously are still masking, and we are very heavily wiping down surfaces and really being very cautious. And we are also, vaccinated and boosted, so it helps protect us against, spreading and things like that. We do encourage our children and our families to get the vaccine as well. It's the best protection that they can get for right now, to hopefully ease that discomfort a little bit. But, we still have telemedicine on the table if it makes them feel more comfortable.
And thank you. And Dr. Eng, speaking of vaccines, and I'm not even talking COVID-19, I am talking measles, mumps, rubella. I'm talking chickenpox, varicella?
Varicella, got it.
Thank you. Dr. Eng, we found that especially during the first year and a half of the pandemic, a lot of these kids fell way behind on those routine immunizations. Why is it important for them to come in? Because obviously you can't do that telehealth. Why is it important to still, though, maintain those yearly wellness checks with a child's pediatrician?
Yeah, so checking in with your pediatrician regularly for their physical, and so they have a medical evaluation, really helps prevent things from getting too far along, and allows us to catch things early and provide medical advice, whether it's issues with nutrition or anything else that comes up. So it's always important to come and actually visit your doctor. Does not matter if you are behind on the vaccines, we can get you caught up. And just wanted to reassure everyone that don't be ashamed to go to the doctor. We're there, we understand. Life happens, COVID happens. There's a lot of things going on out there, but we're always here for you and your children. So we will catch you up on vaccines. We will weigh your child in the clinic, check their height, make sure that they're growing well, and answer any nutrition questions, obviously, that anyone comes to the clinic with.
And something that's been that our primary care practices have really made an effort to do is also just to check on the mental well-being of our kids. This pandemic was not easy for anybody at all. And so that was something that the primary care group also said was very important, is that it is really important for a doctor to get eyes and be able to talk to your kid and just see how they're doing. And something that reminds me of, Sarah, for you, a lot of people use the phrase, I'm going to eat my feelings. And so, there are a lot of foods that provide people comfort. And so how do you balance, and I know you're going to say in moderation, but what if there is something that someone feels super stressed out, maybe their kids do, and they just want to keep eating something? How do you change that mindset, that when it's not really about the food, it's about the feeling you get eating that food? How do you change that mindset for families who do that?
Yeah. I think it's recognizing that you're using it as a coping mechanism and then finding something to replace it with. So maybe going for a walk, maybe completely just removing yourself from, your kitchen or your living room or whatever it is, going for a walk, clearing your head. But this one is difficult because I think at the root of it is they need to be seeking mental health professionals who, you know, can really help them deal with that. Because I can give them substitutes, but I'm not going to be able to fix the root problem.
No, I get that. And that's where, again, it becomes important to have those conversations. Resources are limited. We all know mental health resources in this area are limited, but we do have right next door to Valley Children's Hospital, a brand new behavioral health hospital that's opening up. Our primary care practices are already doing telepsychiatry visits. So we're slowly increasing access there. One more question just came in, Dr. Big. My 14-year-old granddaughter battled COVID. Her stomach, she has stomach ulcerations. Her stomach became ulcerated. She was treated at Valley Children's, took such great care of her. Thank you. We're glad to hear that. Are you finding stomach issues related to COVID in other pediatric patients?
Stomach issues and related to COVID?
Related specifically to COVID.
So there is long COVID. So yes, people can have symptoms once, you know, the actual COVID infection has resolved. But typically, if it's ulcers, there definitely needs, you know, more thorough evaluation with endoscopy, biopsies and stuff to see what actually is going on. So yeah, I would suggest, you know, seeking treatment for that. But typically in children, it's sometimes we're seeing diarrhea that's persisting, you know, even after some months after they've, you know, had their initial COVID infection. A loss of smell, as you all know, is one of them, you know, as well. But diarrhea is something that we have seen. So some of our colleagues have seen patients presenting with diarrhea after their symptoms, you know, after they had COVID. Some of them actually had some irritable bowel syndrome as well. We're actually seeing that they were completely fine before COVID, but that kind of triggered. So yes, we are seeing some symptoms, but we need more data to kind of, you know, come to a consensus what exactly, you know, for the entire, you know, world, like what's the most common one. So diarrhea is something that we're definitely seeing, but we definitely need more data.
Okay, I do know after speaking with our pediatric endocrinologists that they did see an increase in the diagnoses for type 1 and type 2 diabetes among COVID patients, but they cautioned that any virus at all can trigger this in children who
Right.
are already at risk for diabetes. It just so happened, yes, we're seeing it more in COVID patients because COVID is rampant now. And so I didn't know if that was, I do know that that was one specific thing that they were able to say, yes, we're seeing this, but the flu virus could, you know, any other host of viruses could also trigger it. To your point, Dr. Big, talk to your doctor if you notice anything wrong. And then Dr. Hockley, like you said, for us at Valley Children's, we still strongly believe that the best way to protect your family is for everybody eligible to get vaccinated. And I know that right now it's only for 5 and up. And our pediatric specialists are anxiously awaiting when the younger group can get vaccinated. It's looking like not till probably late April, but Dr. Begg, I'm assuming that you're going to say, yeah, if you can get vaccinated, get vaccinated.
Yes, please do. If your child is 5 and above, cannot emphasize enough, please get them vaccinated.
Yeah, and people always say, well, it doesn't work, you're still getting COVID. But yeah, you're not in the hospital.
It's I think from all the devastating consequences, you know, the hospitalizations and all of that. We do see a lot of patients who come to GI for other reasons, and you know, as a protocol, we swab them and you know, we get them tested for COVID, and they come out to be positive, although they are completely asymptomatic, you know, with the symptoms of COVID, but they just have it. So it's better to get yourself vaccinated and yeah, save your family.
Well, I thought we were going to talk about COVID, but we got a little bit in there, which is important because that's the world we're living in right now. Before we leave, any final thoughts? I'd love to get just some final words from all of you. Why don't we start with Sarah?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for letting us talk about nutrition. This is something that, everyone deals with on a daily basis. And so I just want to reiterate kind of what Dr. Ng had started with. Create a really positive environment for your child, whether they're a picky eater or you're trying to get in those healthy foods or whatever you're struggling with. A positive environment and just encouraging a variety in their diet will go a long way.
Thank you, Sarah. Dr. Ng.
Yeah, excuse me. Just really wanted to emphasize that we're all looking out for our kids and their nutrition. A big part of that is also looking out for ourselves and making sure that we are also practicing what we preach. When your child sees you eating healthy, you're setting a good example. And as a family unit, everyone can eat healthier together.
Okay, so do as I say, not as I do, probably won't fly. Mom and dad have to set the example, right?
Exactly.
All right, fine, Dr. Ng. Dr. Hockley.
Yeah, absolutely what Dr. Ng just said. It's kind of a positive mindset. Everyone should, get on board and be super encouraging about it. Nothing is harder than having a child try and go through something alone. And that being said, we're happy to follow with you guys in clinic. We can't wait to see you and ask about your progress and encourage you along the way. It's not a one-stop visit and then we'll never talk about it again. We'll just keep asking and follow with you and encourage you as much as we can.
Great, thank you. And finally, Dr. Bay.
Thank you so much for having me over here today. Had a wonderful time. I would just like to, my parting thoughts would be, totally agree with Dr. Ang and Dr. Hockley that, it's something that you have to do as a family. You cannot isolate one child to eat healthy and the rest of the family is having unhealthy food. You have to implement healthy changes in the entire family. One thing that I would like to mention is that when you're doing groceries, please try to read the nutrition labels because that makes a lot of difference. What is the serving size written on any product, how much you can consume. Try to avoid buying stuff in the first place. Like if you know that juice is unhealthy and you only have to buy it as a treat, so try to avoid buying in the first place so the children don't have access to it. So it all starts with us, what we are getting in the house. A lot of times, I see families, they are like, my child just sneaks food. So why do you have that food in the house, in the first place? So try your best not to get unhealthy, the bad foods or, as we said, the sugary foods that you should only be used as treats in the house available. And yes, work as a family, try not to isolate one child.
Thank you so much. And that reminds me, Megan, who's running this behind the scenes, another member of the Valley Children's team, told me that she finds her daughter is more willing to try new things when she has her daughter help her prepare the dishes. So that's something I think Dr. Hockley, Dr. Ng have told other media, I'm still a media reporter, have told reporters in town. She's, you both said, have your kids participate in shopping and picking the fruits and veggies. Have your kids help you cook. To your point, Dr. Begg, if you get them involved and it's a whole family thing, then your chances of success, I think, are just that much greater. So thank you, everybody, for your time.